So storytelling as a career is sort of something that I didn't think I'd reflect on, let alone learn about in financial services consulting. But this conversation that I had with Ryan was really interesting. I'd never really thought about consultancy like that. I really, it really opened up my perspective to it, and thought about careers differently. So his he started it off, firstly by thinking that I was too young to understand, or know what Friends was, but talking about how none of the group knew what Chandler did, and how he's sort of the Chandler of his friendship group, and then like he had this proud dad moment where he spoke about how his sons knew what he did, and not in some business jargon, in a simple, my dad tells stories. He takes people's business problems and he turns them into stories. He creates a solution and makes it interesting. And it was quite a nice moment that I reflect on quite a bit, about how we are storytellers. We go in, we analyze, we try to solve a problem, and then we tell it back to people. And we make what could be seen as really mundane topics seem really interesting. And it's really opened up my perspective on it, and changed the way that I approach my work. Before it was sort of like I was just telling back financial information, but now I sort of think about it, okay, I need to find this interesting. How can I make it interesting for me so that it's interesting for the client? That it's really important for them to find it interesting. Otherwise, they're not going to implement what we're suggesting, or they're not going to take on board what we're saying. And that I think I've only really started working on in the past 3 weeks, is really approaching my work differently, so that I'm thinking about the final story. What's the ending? It never really occurred to me before, and I know I've said that a couple of times, but it was sort of like this epiphany moment. And so the photo that I've included with this one is something that we did, with two of my colleagues, and they sort of using a couple of us as trainee guinea pigs, and they sort of they gave us a really mundane sort of task and got us to visually represent it as a story. You got to use like 3 words, and that was it. And it was a really cool exercise to sort of see how you can visually represent something. So there was things like making a cup of tea, how to pick the perfect Christmas tree, how you get ready in the morning, and what your favourite meal is. And I mean, you can see in the photo, the 4 of us took a really different approach to each of them. And it was really interesting to see how storytelling differs on the person. And so having a PMO team, having really different perspectives on storytelling, enhances a story, enhances the client delivery, the way that you talk about something. And I'm really glad that I've learned that, because otherwise I would have gone back to uni and sort of being like, yeah, okay, I worked in consulting, really boring. There's a lot of stigma around what consultants do. And I think that it has truly changed my perspective. It's given me a greater appreciation, for what consultants do, and has really changed the way I approach my work. And it's also changed the way that I have an outlook on life. Like, we're all storytellers. Anything we do is telling a story. This is a story. I'm recounting something. We learn it from a young age. You go on an excursion, you write a story about it the next day, what you did. And we kind of lose that along the way. We do it in discussions, but I've never really thought about it integrating into a work life. So it's been a fantastic lesson to learn, and to learn it now, before I go back to uni. I think it's really going to change the way that I approach projects, in group work. What is our final outcome? Yes, we've got a rubric to work to, but what do I want to look back on at the end. It certainly changed the way that I approached this assignment. You know, I wanted to look back at this and not just be a plain old assignment. I wanted it to be something that I can send back to my family in the interim and be like, hey guys, this is what I'm doing. This is this journey that I'm going on. And then be able to go back to uni next year and say, this is what I did for a year. You can follow what I did. You can see that progression in my development. And that ultimately is far greater than, meeting a rubric. It's part of the reason why we do reflective work during this year, is to see how much we change. And I think that progression is really important. So yeah, it's an odd lesson to learn. I think that really helped enhance my work, and it's going to in the future.